Ooh, this is a classic.
Dang it, I took a hit.
Sorry, didn't mean to distract you there, Joey.
All good, Barry.
Why are you playing Mega Man 7 anyways?
The both of you were gone. I drank some energy drinks and had some time to kill. May as well play one of my favorites to pass the time, you know?
I get that vibe, Joe. You know, I'm surprised you didn't put X3 and S tier earlier.
I definitely would have if it was my list, but I wanted to try to be as objective as I could for you and Donald's sake.
I appreciate that, Joe. I wonder if Donald is almost done. I know he inhales Big Macs like air after all. Speak of the devil.
Those Big Macs sure hit the spot. Sounds like you guys missed me.
Just wondered what was taking so long.
You got to savor every bite, Joe. Otherwise, it won't be special.
How philosophical, if only it wasn't about fast food.
Screw you too, Barry. By the way, Joe, why are you playing Mega Man 7? That wouldn't have been my first choice.
It's simply one of my favorites. Nothing more, nothing less.
Either way, we need to continue this list. We were about to start the PlayStation games in this series, starting with X4.
Time to rank the best game in the whole series.
You might be jumping the gun there.
It's just the cold hard truth, Sleepy Joe.
It's too early for this already, guys. Let's just jump straight into it. While a different company helped develop X3, the main team at Capcom worked on X4 to make its debut on the new PlayStation system.
This was a time where many franchises were making the transition to 3D. However, Capcom decided to go against those trends with keeping the X series in a 2D style.
And I must say, they really knocked it out of the park. Even to this day, X4 still looks really great with the sprite quality.
Joe, you sound more articulate than usual. Did you take your meds?
Might be all of these energy drinks taking effect right now. I know these games are going to take a nosedive, so I drank them in the hopes I don't fall asleep during our look at them.
I'm afraid to ask how many.
Just a couple, and I haven't finished the second one just yet. Don't worry, I'll be just fine.
You better not croak on me, Joe. I'd rather not call a mechanic over your maverick ass.
Damn it, Donnie, I'm not a robot.
Let's just switch topics and talk about the overall plot of the game, which this game has plenty of, considering you can play as both X and Zero.
Finally, my boy Zero finally gets the attention he deserves. And it's a full campaign, not the half-assed crap that was in X3.
I never did understand their approach with Zero and X3. As much as I love the game, it still baffles me to this day. Either way, I'm happy Zero gets his dues in this game, and it's a nice change of pace gameplay-wise.
So when you start the game, you can choose to play as X or Zero. Both have separate campaigns that have different story beats.
And we gotta talk about Zero right now.
Hold your horses, Donald. We all know there is a lot to unpack with Zero's story. Let's start with X first. Besides, we got to save the best for last, right?
Fine, fine. I'll let you guys start with X, mainly due to me agreeing with you about Zero being the best.
Jeez, Donnie, calm down.
X's campaign starts with a meeting between a Raploid of huge stature named General and... Oh, look, it's Sigma again.
Way to ruin the twist villain already, Capcom.
Sigma wants General to act out against the humans because they can't be trusted. And General refuses to harm the humans in any way and tells Sigma to leave.
All while Sigma cackles like a maniac about how General will change his tune. What a great and subtle villain.
Let's get to some of the gameplay. You start off by going to the Sky Lagoon, which is being attacked by Mavericks, and you're sent to try and stop the attack, only to meet one of your allies, Magma Dragoon. He says that the whole thing is coming down, and the only thing they can both do is escape. You both escape, but the whole lagoon comes down and kills countless innocents.
Once you stop the attack, you meet with Colonel. He is a high-ranking officer in the Rapal Force Army. X wants them to disarm and come in for questioning, considering they were patrolling the area at the time of the attack. Unfortunately, due to a huge sense of pride, Colonel refuses to disarm and come in for questioning because to him, soldiers don't disarm unless they cannot fight anymore.
To that I say good. Soldiers need to uphold their honor after all.
You can't be serious, Donald. How can you support them when this is the whole reason why the game even happens in the first place?
It's simple, Barry. That army didn't cause the attack, and the Maverick Hunters are spreading fake news like CNN.
Obama, just don't entertain him. We all know the true culprit of that attack anyways. He's just doing a bit.
It's not a complete bit, Joe. The Maverick Hunters labeled that whole army as Maverick without as much as an investigation to try to see who really did it. Sure, we all know who did it, but before that revelation even happens, that Maverick label is slapped all over that army too quickly. Normally, I wouldn't side with them, but after being hit with charges that are false and fake news, I definitely relate to them far more.
I guess that's a way to think about it, but I don't have the energy to debate this topic.
I'm just going to ignore all of that. Anyways, after that tragedy, General decides to make a utopia for only Raploids as a means of fighting for their own security and individual rights, and not as a means of rebellion against humans.
They've been wrongly labeled as Mavericks. Of course, they would want their own nation of only Raploids. They shouldn't be affected by such fake news.
Can I just say that Sigma was the one behind literally everything already? Like, everyone knows it's not a spoiler.
Just give up, Barry. I have a long time ago.
Let's just go over the bosses you fight. We have Web Spider, Split Mushroom, Cyber Peacock, Storm Owl, the Traitor, Magma Dragoon, Frost Walrus, Jet Stingray, and Slash Beast. You also have a new character named Double as an assistant when selecting a stage.
And these stages are some of the best in the series, well designed and very colorful to look at too. You have a jungle where you're stopping a weapon, going through cyberspace, riding a train, and moving through an air fleet while you destroy it, and through a tundra, to name a few.
Oh look, it's Blizzard, Buffalo, and Chill Penguin.
Easter eggs aside, these stages are put together a bit differently compared to past games. They're split into two separate parts that you have to load into. They also fill your health when you move to set areas.
It makes the stages a bit meatier and gives the devs some space to make some neat level gimmicks. Cyber Peacock's first part rewards you for clearing its sections within a certain time limit. It's how you get the heart container, a sub-tank, and an armor piece.
Cyber Peacock stage is my favorite in the game. It rewards good gameplay, and it can be a short stage because of it.
Or with Web Spider's first part, you have to traverse waterfalls and vertical paths, and they are more open. The second part, you go through a more forest-like area where it's mainly horizontal, while it's more enclosed.
And Jet Stingray is probably my least favorite stage. It's a neat stage, but it's just a biker stage and that's it. Sometimes sudden obstacles can kill you if your reaction time isn't good enough.
Skill issue.
To move to a different topic, these weapons are pretty good. They have a lot more utility to them compared to the last game. Lightning Web can give you an extra wall to jump off of to get to hard-to-reach areas. Twin Slasher can hit a wide area. Rising Fire can hit straight above you. Ground Hunter can hit low enemies. And Aiming Laser can hit multiple targets for you if you hover the reticule over them.
Unfortunately, not every weapon is useful. Soul Body projects a copy of you in front of you to damage enemies. It's not really that useful. I'd also argue the charged version is even worse. You control a copy of X, but only on the screen you use it in. It doesn't last long either.
Either way, most of these weapons are very useful. It does make a decent segue for the fourth armor, which is without a doubt the most rounded out armor in the entire series. The helmet gives you unlimited use for your special weapons, which is insane. Also, that plasma shot is insanely strong. It hits a wide area and leaves behind plasma that continues to deal damage.
We wish for armor this useful and strong in every single game.
There is a second arm part that you can switch back and forth from. Trump already mentioned the plasma shot. This other part allows you to charge 4 charge shots at one time and fire them off back to back. It has some fringe uses, but it's nowhere near the usefulness of the plasma shot. I think we all agree that that part is what you should keep.
Agreed.
Once you beat 4 bosses, you fight Colonel as a boss fight at the Memorial Hall. X once again tries to talk the Colonel into stepping down and clearing their names, but to no avail. You beat him, and he escapes, saying it won't be the same outcome next time.
After you deal with the 8 bosses, you are sent to the spaceport to stop Repliforce from going into space. You find Colonel again, who is there to buy time by keeping you busy so the shuttle can launch. We end up beating him, but it doesn't matter. They have successfully launched to space.
These next stages are the final stages of the game, called the Final Weapon, a weapon satellite. This is where Repliforce wants to start their Raploid nation.
I have some things to say about this particular idea of theirs.
In due time, Joe. So we learned that Double has actually been working with Sigma this whole time. I admit I didn't see it coming at first, but his name is Double after all.
Barry, I'd expect this from Joe, but how did you not expect that one?
Skill issue, I guess.
Double does have one of my favorite designs, though. He definitely has that menacing aura to him and was competent enough to keep his cover till the end.
Zero would have definitely seen right through that Maverick if Double was partnered with him.
For the story's sake, probably for the best.
Our next fight is with General. He is quite a big boy, taking up half the area you fight him in. Easy enough fight, but he is very annoying in general, no pun intended. X definitely has a much better matchup with this guy than Zero.
You know what I call that? A skill issue.
No one asked you, Donnie.
We beat him, and wait, something is weird. The satellite is being controlled by someone else. Gee, I wonder who it could be.
Hardly matters, though. One boss rush later, and we find Sigma, who has taken control of the satellite and pulled the strings of both the Maverick Hunters and Repliforce. Even I will admit this design of Sigma looks real slick. He pulls off a good Grim Reaper.
This first fight is actually pretty unique in the way that only his weakness hurts him, which is Magma Dragoon's weapon. Pretty easy to deal with. Just hit him when he appears above you. The next phase is a bit more challenging, though. Web Spider's weapon is the weakness now, and some of his attacks are difficult to dodge. I really hate those boomerangs so much, man.
Come on, Joe, just bait Sigma to use his other attack instead of the boomerang by having Sigma aim his scythe at the wall. It's much easier to dodge the eye lasers.
So now you might think we beat him now, but you would be mistaken. Sigma has a third form in this game, and it can be painfully annoying. You have to take down two different forms of Sigma in this fight, and they appear in an alternating pattern back and forth from each other. One is Earth Sigma, who either blows you into a spike wall or sucks in debris and spews it back out at you. The other is Gunner Sigma, who either tries to shoot you with his gun or tries to hit the ground you stand on. This one is far easier if you ask me.
In between those two, you have these small Sigma heads that alternate different attacks depending on which one is attacking. Yellow sends lightning balls at you that trail off when they hit the ground or wall. Blue sends out snow at you, and red shoots fireballs out in a spread.
This fight is definitely one of my favorite Sigma fights. There's a lot to watch out for and always keeps you on your toes. And it also provides a great sense of satisfaction if you can get through it without taking a single hit in all of it. Which I can definitely do because I'm one of the best. Some might say the best.
Straight cap.
Fuck you guys. You're just jealous you aren't as good as I am.
Show us that footage first, buddy.
So with Sigma defeated, he still threatens to destroy the Earth with the satellite. That's when General appears and sacrifices himself to stop the weapon from firing, and as a way to make amends for how Repliforce acted before this moment.
I'd say he ended on a good note. He never wanted to harm humans, but his decision to create a nation for them led his army to do terrible acts, and as their leader, he had to take all the responsibility for said actions. Then we end with X escaping from the exploding satellite via a small escape vehicle. He thinks about his encounters with Colonel and Double, whether what he is doing is truly the right thing or not. Zero contacts him from HQ and tells X that it's all over and should go rest. X asks Zero about taking care of him if he ever becomes Maverick, which Zero dismisses and ends the call.
And that's the end of X's campaign. Now we have the other part.
Yes, Zero's campaign. I'm taking point on this one, Barry.
Fine, just calm down, Donald.
So we start Zero's campaign with him waking up in a capsule, seeing a silhouette of Dr. Wily talking about Zero being his masterpiece. Zero asks, who is he? But Wily only tells Zero to go after him and that he is his nemesis. We can only assume Wily means Dr. Light by this statement. Wily tells Zero further that that is an order and fades away. Zero tries to catch him but gets racked by a painful headache. Then we see imagery of Sigma screaming in pain, dead Raploids everywhere, Zero's blueprints on monitors, and Zero having blood. Oil-stained hands. He wakes up to an emergency call to assemble all available hunters.
Straight away, we can tell most of the story went to Zero's side. There is so much intrigue about Zero's history here.
We did get confirmation about Zero being one of Wily's creations in an arcade game called Mega Man 2, The Power Fighters. But this scene nails that right into the coffin, just in case anyone had the smallest shred of doubt about it.
So now we get to Zero's intro stage. It's still on the Sky Lagoon, nothing different minus the music that plays. We get to experience Zero's new gameplay style. He mainly uses his sword for combat, so you have to be up close and personal to deal with enemies. All of his swings animate real smoothly, and you can clearly see where each swing is supposed to hit. They got it all correct on the first try, and it's nice to approach combat like this instead of like X.
Trump is cooking with gas today. I don't think we can add anything more without sounding redundant.
I'll agree to that. Zero adds a unique layer of play style and difficulty that was much deserved in this series.
Just stay seated, gentlemen. I'm cooking up some gourmet food right now. You come across a new character named Iris. She is damaged and laying on the ground. You can tell they already know each other and have at least some type of relationship already. Zero affirms to her that he is going to save her and moves ahead to deal with the same dragon boss as usual. You still come across Colonel, and you can immediately tell that him and Zero have history and a form of camaraderie. Colonel says he is here to rescue his sister Iris, only to see Zero has already done it and thanks him. Zero asks if his unit attacked the Sky Lagoon, only for him to deny it and claim they were here to help. Zero asks him to disarm and come to HQ, but we know what happens afterwards.
We get to the stage select screen, and this time Iris is our assistant for Zero's campaign. It's just a shame we literally don't know anything about her outside of being Colonel's sister, and that Zero and her have a relationship. The game doesn't tell this information to us at all.
Who cares? Zero's got that riz and pulled himself a cutie. I respect that alpha energy.
I'm going to change the subject before Trump needs to go to horny jail. Zero has the same stages as X, but there aren't any armor upgrades for Zero to pick up. Otherwise, everything else is in the same places.
You are the last person to tell me to go to horny jail, and with you it's for all the wrong reasons.
Anyways, when Zero defeats bosses, he gets new attacks like X does. What's different here is that these are techniques instead, and they don't use a meter to use them.
Some of these techniques give him different attacks that you can use with simple commands like an uppercut slash, a downward stab in the air, or slashing in a circle in the air instead. Others can passively improve his platforming, such as giving him a double jump or dashing in the air. And these can be used in combos together to make for a well-varied system that gives players the tools to approach enemies however they want.
The halfway point is very different for Zero. You go to meet Colonel at Memorial Hall, and a cutscene follows. Zero states his disappointment and attacks Colonel, who looks very surprised at what Zero is doing. Zero wants him to stop the coup, but Colonel declines, so they fight. It gets broken up by Iris telling them to stop fighting and that Zero saved her life. Colonel spares Zero and says it won't be like this next time.
It's so interesting about this group's relation with one another. Colonel and Zero are good war buddies. Iris and Colonel are siblings. Zero and Iris are in a relationship. This moment really brings some interesting drama to their relationships and tests their limits.
And things don't go well for any of them. On the second fight with Colonel, you end up killing him. He tells you to tell Iris that her brother died happy. Your next encounter is with none other than Iris. She's holding... Wait, what is she holding?
I'm actually not too sure. I think it's supposed to be Colonel's core, but the game doesn't really explain it either. She merges with it and gets covered by a type of flying mech rider armor.
Every time you hit her, these bombs come out and home in on you if you don't blow them up. You have to aim for this glowing purple crystal to deal damage to her. After the fight, Zero rushes to her to help her. She says she wanted to live with Zero in a world with only Rayploids, but unfortunately it's just a fleeting dream. She smiles and then dies. This scene is the most infamous scene in the whole series. It's supposed to be a very serious moment showing Zero's pain of losing such a special person to him, but we all just laugh at the terrible voice acting instead.
It encapsulates the entirety of this specific issue in the game. We can talk about it in a bit.
Then we fight General again. It's the same fight, but you need to approach it differently as Zero. You don't have the luxury of shooting him from a distance.
Definitely tricky if you aren't familiar with the fight.
Now we get to the good stuff. The encounter with Sigma brings with it some new backstory for Zero. Sigma tells Zero about how he found him in an abandoned lab. Zero was in a type of rampage and had wiped out an entire unit at this point. Sigma is going to personally deal with this himself to keep his men from being killed. Sigma was such a badass leader before going mad. Sigma enters the lab, Zero notices him, and the fight starts. They start trading fisticuffs and evading each other, going toe-to-toe with one another. Sigma eventually judo throws him and then sends him into the ceiling. This doesn't faze Zero in the slightest, even starts laughing maniacally like he is enjoying it too much. Sigma pulls out his sword while Zero uses a pipe and they start clashing. Sigma destroys Zero's weapon. Then the tide turns as Zero takes out Sigma's left arm. Then Zero just starts destroying Sigma with no remorse, giving him the scars we recognize on him today. Suddenly, a W appears in Zero's head crest, and he gets racked with a painful headache. Sigma sees an opening and destroys that crest and KOs Zero in one blow.
I can't argue that Sigma wasn't such a boss at that moment. He really took charge and took care of that situation as best as it could have.
You fight Sigma, and nothing is different about it. You finish Sigma off and escape the satellite, and Zero comes to the conclusion that maybe this was his fate and why he couldn't save anyone. He also posits that maybe all Rayploids go Maverick someday.
To our viewers, I apologize if this took a while to get here, but this story is quite big compared to the other 3 games we looked at. We just want to make sure it's all laid out first.
I want to start us off with the premise of the story. It tries to be deep, but it's still kind of a dumb story if I'm being honest. This all happened because Rape LaForce had too much pride to lay their weapons down and to simply talk it out. Instead, they denied to disarm, and it only made them more suspicious to the Maverick hunters. Donald, I know you side with them, but think about it. If you had an army like this, would your pride alone be worth more than your entire army being branded as the bad guy and having to fight to simply survive persecution instead of fighting for their original cause?
Come on, Joe. They didn't even get a proper investigation to verify if they were innocent or not. The Maverick hunters just gave them a verdict straight away with no due course. It's injustice, Sleepy Joe.
I'm all for due course, but you have to consider the situation at the time. A giant lagoon in the sky fell on a city and killed countless people. Chaos was everywhere. Mavericks were everywhere. Priorities had to be made to help survivors to remain as calm as possible.
So you admit that they at least rushed their decision to label that army as Maverick then?
Both of you stop. I also think Rape LaForce's lack of cooperating was a stupid call, but even I never thought in this sort of detail about it. Let's just move on because this will go in circles otherwise. So we did see Magma Dragoon at the lagoon at the start. We learned that he betrayed us and works for Sigma now. So you might wonder, why? Why did he send the whole thing to fall from the sky? It was simply to fight X or Zero, that is all. You couldn't just do some kind of sparring match. They're both robots. They can just be repaired. This was all so unnecessary.
Then we have Colonel versus Zero. Colonel asks Zero to meet up at the hall, and that's all. The cutscene shows us that Colonel didn't plan on fighting at all. Why else would he ask what Zero was doing when he got jumped by him? I don't know why Zero would just jump to that conclusion of fighting Colonel.
They're both old war buddies. Their secondary language is a clash of swords, and that is something the both of them can understand.
That still doesn't answer why Colonel was shocked at Zero's sudden attack, though.
I'm going to cut this off right now before it devolves into something stupid. Let's go over the graphics and the music. This new game takes full advantage of the new hardware and what it can do. It makes a great first impression about this new generation of this series.
You know what? I'll allow this change of subject because I agree with everything you just said. We have already mentioned the graphics earlier, but not the music. The soundtrack is amazing in its own way. It doesn't go with rock as its style, but leans more into a techno vibe. I'll admit I wasn't as on board with this music on my first go, but it grew on me over time, and it's one of my favorite soundtracks because of it.
What else can I say, but I agree with you both. It's hard to find anyone that would disagree with those statements.
I feel like we've been on this game for long enough. How do we rank this one, gentlemen?
I think you all know what I think of this game. Give this game that S tier.
Personally, I think this is an A tier. It's a great game, but
Joe, do you hate this series?
let me finish, Donald. The story to me leaves a lot to be desired. The armor and the way lives work makes some power-ups just worthless. All that said, I wouldn't be mad at all with an S tier spot. Those things I listed are personal gripes that don't ruin the game.
Personally, I agree with Donald with an S tier. The story has its bad moments, but they don't get in the way of the gameplay one bit. It's still a great example of what a Mega Man X game should be like.
Plus, the much-needed lore and character development for Zero makes this an instant favorite for people like me.
We know you are such a Zero stan, Donald. Anyways, with that done, we can finally move on to Mega Man X5.
Now I'm getting sleepy.
Bro,
Hold it, you two. We gotta stay focused. This game was supposed to be the final game in the series, having a lot of callbacks to past titles and a sense of finality to characters and their developments. Of course, that's not how it ended up going, but let's stay on track here.
We also get introduced to some new characters in this one. Cygnus, who is the leader of the Maverick Hunters. Alia, who acts as a navigator during missions. Last up is Douglas, who is an engineer that can help with attaching parts to X and Zero to further augment their abilities.
Alia is so damn annoying in this game. I know how to play Mega Man X.
Alia is pretty fine looking if you ask me. I have a soft spot for blondes. She can get this Trump Tower anytime.
You know she is a robot, right, Donald?
Exactly, and she can be modified anytime.
Gross. This game starts with a cutscene showing a new character named Dynamo. He has been hired by Sigma to bring down a space colony called Eurasia which Dynamo already sabotaged, and released a virus on board said colony to help it crash into the Earth. After that, the game starts, and regardless of who you pick to play as, it's pretty much the same campaign for both X and Zero. Both get called out to confront Sigma, who is moving to the big statue. You fight him and defeat him, but this was part of his plan. His defeat scatters the Sigma virus across the world, and now the space colony Eurasia is now on a collision course for the Earth and will crash within 16 hours.
This game's story certainly grabs your attention with such high stakes, and I think that's a good thing overall. However, the rest after this is not well handled.
Speaking of badly handled things, when it comes to selecting your character, and I hate to say this as a big Zero fan, pick X. What this game doesn't tell you is that you get a perk for picking one or the other. Picking Zero gives you this paperweight of a Z-Buster weapon for him. Sure, it's a long-range option for him, but it sucks ass 6 ways from Sunday. The wind-up is too slow and the damage sucks ass. Meanwhile, picking X gives you the 4th armor, the whole fucking thing. Sure, it's slightly nerfed from X4, but this is such a better option to have for your playthrough over Zero's perk.
I really hated that part of the character select screen, and I agree 100% Donnie. This game doesn't tell you that both X and Zero share the same game, and you can switch back and forth with them before any stage. X4 was far more robust with playing one or the other, having completely different experiences.
This is one part of why I'm not a big fan of this game, but we need to stay on track, fellas.
That's my line, Joe. So, the plan to deal with the falling satellite is to use an old cannon called the Enigma to attempt to destroy the satellite before it falls to the Earth. Otherwise, the backup plan is to use a shuttle to ram it into the satellite to destroy it.
I must say the Enigma is well named because I don't know how the fuck this thing is supposed to work. It has never worked at all during my runs of this game.
The bosses in this game all hold parts that help boost your chances of these plans being successful. It encourages you to fight 4 specific bosses depending on where you are at, but you can fight any of them as you wish. The bosses of this game are Crescent Grizzly, Tidal Whale, Volt Crack.
Hold up, Sleepy Joe. That's not their names.
It's the official translation for these bosses, you orange baboon. How could they be wrong?
Right, and Zoro's name in One Piece's official translation is Zolo, yet no one calls him that at all. If we're naming these bosses, we are doing it right. These bosses in this game are Grizzly Slash, Duff McWhalen, Squid Adler, Izzy Glow, Dark Dizzy, the Skyver, Matt Rex, and Axel the Red.
For the few people that are lost in this, the official translator of this game, Allison Court, was requested by her husband at the time to change the names of the bosses to be references to the band members of Guns N' Roses.
That may be true, but every other piece of media from this game uses the official translation of the Maverick bosses.
Sure, but how can you say that Tidal Whale is better than Duff McWhalen? That name is badass, unlike Tidal Whale.
I never said one was better over the other, Don. I was just sticking with the facts.
Like Joe said before, these bosses hold parts to increase your odds at successfully destroying the satellite to continue the story. If the Enigma is successful, it becomes a shortcut to the final stages right then and there. If you fail, you have to go with driving a shuttle into it to destroy it, and Zero has to be the one that drives it. The shuttle has much higher odds of succeeding, but if it does fail, you lose Zero as a playable character.
And of course, I had to have the most rotten luck on my first playthrough to lose Zero entirely. I was stuck with X, who had no upgrades to him or anything. I hated this game for a long time because of that alone.
That's one of my big reasons for not liking this game. You can't control the outcomes or endings of this game. Things just happen whether you want them to or not, and the potential consequences can be dire depending on your choices.
Rein it back a little bit, Joe. Don't want you popping a blood vessel or something.
My bad, my emotions got me on that one. I really don't like how they handled this, that's all.
As painful as the story is in that aspect, I don't think this game is that bad. It is fun to play at least. So anyways, back to the story. This whole story is about Sigma trying to bring Zero to his true self, you could say. Spreading the Sigma virus isn't enough to do that, so he combines it with the virus from the colony that Dynamo put in to create what's called the Zero virus. This turns Zero into a maverick, a killing machine hell-bent on destroying everything, X included.
This Zero virus manifests as a purple mirage of Zero himself, which attacks you in the Zero stages after the 8 bosses. Before that, it was a giant Sigma head when it's just the Sigma virus. I do love the detail for how it interacts with X and Zero. If X gets hit enough times by them, it deals damage to him. If Zero gets hit enough times by them, it heals his health and makes him invincible for a bit of time.
And after seeing these effects on Zero, the hunters start to worry about Zero being a potential threat due to him being stronger in all of this chaos.
So we have these 0 stages after the 8 bosses. 2 of these 3 stages have bosses that are callbacks to the previous games in Mega Man's history. The first boss is the Shadow Devil. Not a hard boss, really. All you got to do is mash that wall kick and you'll never get hit by its attacks.
I think you're undermining this boss, Donald. It's definitely a callback to the Yellow Devil in Mega Man 1, and it's just as BS-inducing as it has always been. The touch damage alone is insane. I do find it cool that it turns into Wily Machine 6 from Mega Man 6 for one of its attacks.
Joe, how on earth do you remember that specific detail when having dementia?
Donald, you should know that the classic series is my jam.
Our next boss is Rungdabangda from the first X game. It's mostly the same fight, but some of its moves are revamped to be more threatening. It can summon spikes on the walls when it closes you in instead of just the floor this time around. And Gaia armor can definitely help you out a lot in this fight.
Probably the only thing that armor will be useful for.
Big L for Gaia armor.
There's a point in the story where, depending on how the cannon and shuttle play out, you can have different outcomes for the fight between X and Zero. Going in as X, you try to get Zero to return to base due to not wanting him to be exposed to the Zero virus for too long, and Zero is stubborn about following X's order. Going in as Zero, X is there with 2 medic robots that want to arrest Zero due to his increasing power with the Zero virus. Finally, going in as X, when Zero has turned Maverick, has you fight Zero, who is at full power, to bring him back from the brink.
I do admit, as much as I hated playing X without much in the way of upgrades, fighting Zero at full power like that was a nice treat. The soundtrack is also a legendary jam, too.
Unfortunately, our editor wasn't able to get footage of his own for this particular version of the fight. The RNG for getting that ending was not in his favor, no matter how many times he repeated the process to get there.
After this fight, they actually mention a previous weapon from X4, Soul Body, being used by the opponent to weaken the player. From my memory, it's the only time they do that in a story scene, which is pretty neat. Sigma then shows up to try to finish off X. This part has a couple of outcomes. If Zero is normal, he will fight off Sigma to protect X and then collapses from exhaustion. If Zero went Maverick, he returns to normal to sacrifice his life to protect X. Again, I hate the story's randomness because of this particular outcome. It kills off Zero as a playable character and makes you use X, who you might not want to use, and puts you at a disadvantage.
After that, we fight the usual boss rush to reach Sigma at last, for the 5th time.
He does have a cool body design in this game, though, having a sleek black and white body with a cool-looking cape. He fights similarly to how he does in X1. Once we beat that form, he will say something different depending on who you play. If it's X, he hints at meeting an old guy that has a major hate boner for X. Playing as Zero, he mentions the same old guy who knows Zero inside and out, to the point that he could be Zero's father. It's obvious he means Dr. Wily.
I did have a cool feeling of nostalgia when Sigma mentioned him to X and Zero. It enforces the timeline between the classic and X series.
So Sigma's final form is an incomplete battle body PNG file in the background. It can be tricky at moments, but nothing to majorly stress about.
You admitting a boss fight is tricky? I wouldn't have expected such humility, Trump.
This fight isn't any trouble for me at all, but I'm just built different compared to everyone else, so I can't be putting false expectations on people.
Donald, that is straight cap.
What proof do you have to deny that again?
Whatever, I don't have the energy to deal with that.
Some of this form's moves involve moving some hands with spikes on them around the stage, attacking with electric balls that target wherever you are, square energy attacks that appear depending on your position, and dragging a hand, shooting electricity left to right. Movement and positioning is a big part of this fight.
Color me impressed, Donald. You know your stuff when it comes to the fights.
Of course I do. It's my specialty after all.
When Sigma is defeated, he will attempt to take Zero with him. We look at Zero and, yeah, he has had better days. X tries to wake him up, but Sigma gets a double kill with a surprise laser shot. Zero jolts awake and fires a blast at Sigma to finally put him down, and then dying in the process to protect his friend.
I'll say it again, even in death, Zero is such a badass.
Fighting Sigma as Zero pans out a little differently. After those events we talked about, his life flashes before his eyes, him fighting Sigma from X4, another where he is incomplete on a table with Dr. Wily working on him and calling him the destroyer of robots, and him thinking of Iris in his final moments, apologizing to her and then saying that it's better he dies for the sake of peace in the world.
Our endings also change depending on Zero again. X is repaired by a mysterious glowing figure. It's never said outright, but this is Dr. Light. If Zero was normal, he just gets repaired and then fights on in Zero's memory 3 years later. This is the good ending you ideally want to go for. If Zero went Maverick, Dr. Light erases the memory of Zero to ease X's pain. 1 week later, the hunters are moving things around, one asking X about Zero, but he has no memory of Zero whatsoever, aside from remembering everything else. Cygnus, Douglas, and Aaliyah talk about what happened, about how it's a miracle X came back with no scratch on him, how repairing X and Zero was always difficult, and also adding that there is a built-in protection in his system to prevent any data on Zero being put in his memories. We get back to X and the others, where X mentions his dream of building a utopia called Elysium, a paradise for Raploids and humans.
That is actually a lead-up to another series called Mega Man Legends, which takes place thousands of years later in the timeline.
Enough of the trivia. We should go over some of the gameplay for this one.
Agreed. This is basically like X4 for the most part. There are some interesting new gameplay features for this one, like ducking and being able to hang off of zip lines and moving across them. It adds a small amount of depth to the way stages are made and to how you interact with enemies. I think this game takes a big dive on level design and item gathering. It's not a complete lost cause. But if I have to play Duff McWhalen stage one more time, I'm gonna scream.
I've fallen asleep playing that level and somehow still beat the submarine.
I'm not surprised you fell asleep to that, but I got to call some cap for beating that submarine without even looking at the game.
That is what happened. One moment I was fighting that sub, then when I blinked, it was at the end of the stage.
Your Secret Service team probably did that to make yourself feel better about yourself.
We can't forget Squid Adler stage 2.
You guys have skill issues. It's one of my favorite stages. It's not bad at all.
I rest my case, Donald.
Plus, Trump, you got to admit that bouncing wildly back and forth as Zero trying to press those switches can get annoying even for you.
Just got to get the rhythm down. It's a pattern just like the bosses. Once you know it, it's not so bad.
Wait, now that I think about it, do you guys remember Dynamo?
Shit, I sure did forget. This story really swept him under the rug, didn't it?
It's a shame, too. He has a cool design with a very confident attitude that is just there to cause some havoc. All he does is fight us a couple times, and that's pretty much it. You should drink those energy drinks more, Joe. They make you very capable, unlike how you are without them.
Fuck you, you Tornado Tunyon lookalike.
The weapons for X in this game, I personally don't like them. The fourth armor is more than enough to tackle anything the game can throw at you. Grizzly Slash's weapon can charge to be a barrier, and that wasn't a bad weapon. The Tri-Thunder is also a pretty good weapon due to it firing 3 projectiles that go up, down, and right in front.
Tri-Thunder being a callback to Electman's weapon was cool. Darkhold was also a nice throwback, but this weapon doesn't damage Spiral Pegasus unlike Quickman's weapon that this was based off of. But you can fire your Buster unlike in the classic series. It does get use in one of the final stages to stop instant kill lasers from firing off and blocking your path. A reference to Quickman's stage.
Duff McWhalen's weapon would be a ton more useful if you couldn't duck, but being able to do that now means you can deal with low-to-the-ground enemies just fine.
Zero's techniques are mostly the same, but just a different flavor. Your uppercut is lightning instead of fire, and your down stab is fire instead of ice. You can also use Darkhold like X, and you're able to send a clone of yourself in front of you that mimics your attacks. It's neat, but your circular slash is pretty much all you'll need.
This game also is the first game to have 2 armors for X to find. The downside is that you have to find all of the parts of an armor to even use the armor. The in-game explanation is for security reasons concerning the Sigma virus being so widespread. It's still a downside all the same because it takes away the excitement from using a new armor part you just happen to find.
Maybe it's for the best because the Falcon armor snaps this game's difficulty right in half. That flight ability ruins any platforming challenge this game can provide. You also have the Gaia armor, but it's so bad. Worst armor of the series, I'd say. You're slow, you can't use special weapons, and your dash is weak.
I try to vouch for it, but the Gaia armor is actually that bad. You do have strong regular attacks, but the range is very bad. The best thing this armor has is immunity to spikes.
Unlike an X4, Zero can actually find armor in this game called the Black Armor. It was just a palette swap in X4, but here it increases defense and attack power along with giving more weapon energy. It kind of acts like an ultimate armor for Zero. Plus, it looks slick as fuck.
X also has an ultimate armor in this game. It's mostly like the fourth armor, but quite a bit stronger. It's purple in color. Your plasma shot leaves more plasma balls behind on hits, and you have unlimited Nova Strikes, which shreds bosses. You can find it either at Zero Stage 3 down a pit behind a fake wall, or using a cheat code at the start of the game. The Black Zero armor is also found the same way.
I want to add that I think the level design isn't completely equal for X and Zero. Stages feel far easier with X compared to Zero due to his gameplay style. X4 felt more evenly balanced between the two as far as playability is concerned.
Sleepy Joe, that's a skill issue. Zero is a character meant for advanced players after all, and I'm the most advanced player here.
I suppose being able to handle problems at distance just makes it easier by default compared to face-to-face combat. I can't help but shake the feeling that it's a little lopsided though. Probably just a personal gripe, if anything.
Is there anything else we are forgetting? I almost think we covered most of the relevant things.
What about the parts system? I can't blame you guys for forgetting that. I almost forgot that myself.
Oh, right, I forgot that system too. They don't really explain it all that well. You can get parts after boss fights depending on what level they are when you fight them. The higher they are, the easier it is to get parts from them. They can be used by X and Zero to make them a little stronger. This is going to be a really simplified way to describe how to get the parts. I'd recommend looking up a guide. The way to get the parts is by having around 8 hours on the clock. This will increase the Mavericks levels when you fight them, and they need to be at least level 8. After you beat them, you can get parts from them to equip to X and Zero. Some of these parts include extending your reach with Zero Saber, increased life, increased dash length, and decreasing your charge time.
I never really dabbled much in this system because I never really felt like I needed it. It also doesn't help the game doesn't really show anything about this system too.
I think we got all the important parts of this game discussed. I'd say this game is a B tier. It's fun, but some parts of the game took a dip in quality, and the possibility of Zero dying can really screw with your playthrough.
I think C is more appropriate. For what was supposed to be last game in the series, it felt lazy compared to X4. That game had anime-style cutscenes throughout the story. The presentation of this game is very lacking when comparing the two with the still images and all. The noise from the text box got grating over time.
Also, introducing new characters and not developing them or giving them much screen time doesn't help with me either. Outside of being the leader of the hunters, we don't know anything about Cygnus. Aelia constantly interrupting gameplay with tutorials was the pits. Douglas is just a mechanic, and that's all we know about him. We also can't forget Dynamo. He got snuffed here. We don't know his motivations for helping Sigma. Does he want money? Does he want to simply cause havoc? We don't know anything.
I see what you guys are saying, but this game is still at least fun to play. It's just X4, but better.
I suppose that's true in some ways, but I think C is the right placement here. Not a bad game, but a lot of things don't hit the mark here. Now we got our last game for today, Mega Man X6.
Where is the Burnet in the deepest parts of Hell tier?
Come on, Joe, this game isn't that terrible.
Donnie, are you listening to yourself? That has to be the dumbest thing I've heard you say.
Compared to what's coming next on this list, you know I'm right, Sleepy Joe.
Let's save it for later, boys. So X6 was greenlit for development without the involvement of Keiji because he wanted to end the series at X5. He was helping develop a standalone Zero series on the Game Boy Advance. Needless to say, the production of this game changed around how the story of that game was going to go. We can talk about it at a different time, though.
Leave it to Capcom to mess up something so simple.
This game starts 3 weeks after the events of X5. Zero has gone missing, and the space colony crashed into the Earth, wiping most of it out. Wait, how does that happen when the colony crashing into the Earth is the bad ending where Zero goes Maverick? Those events show Zero is confirmed dead, not missing. Does this game follow the good ending then?
It follows the good ending, but there are some retcons already, it seems. Anyways, we get introduced to a scientist named Gate. who is studying the crash site of the space colony Eurasia. He finds a specific part on the ground and goes mad, wanting to create a utopia for only Raploids. Getting a sense of deja vu here.
The next scene is X having a dream about Zero, telling him that he is the last hunter left that can fight and to wake up. Aelia wakes him up to send him on a mission at the colony crash site to fight a berserk mechanoid.
This is the start of the intro stage. You get the Falcon armor from the last game, but the air dash function can't be used since it was hastily repaired. This stage is one of the best intro stages in the whole series. The music has a somber tone to show the destruction of the space colony and the effects it's had on the world. It shows you how to use Zero's saber and how it can destroy certain things. X can't use it as proficiently as Zero could, but that only makes sense since it isn't X's forte. We fight the boss at the end, and it also shows that sometimes you need to hit weak spots on certain enemies to deal the most damage to them. In this case, it's a ball that is controlling this giant mechanoid. We beat this thing and, wait, is that Zero? He helps us finish this thing off, then disappears afterwards. Another character named High Max shows up claiming to be investigating the Zero Nightmare and confronts X, claiming that he is too dangerous.
High Max and his big O-looking ass. You can't damage him at all during this fight. Then he roasts X by saying he isn't impressed and tells him to stay out of their way as they deal with the Zero Nightmare.
We get to a scene of a new character named Isaac giving a speech about the current situation. A new danger called the Nightmare threatens what's left of the Earth. It makes Raploids confused and can potentially make them malfunction or even destroy themselves. Isaac then casts blame to a ghostly vision of Zero to be the cause of this nightmare as a whole and drums up volunteers to deal with this threat once and for all.
Of course, X is upset about this random robot casting blame on his best friend for giving his life for the cause. They don't know anything more about this phenomenon either, so the hunters decide they should investigate this nightmare. They've already seen the vision of Zero once before, so they want to figure out what's going on.
You are then sent to 8 areas that are being occupied by investigators of this nightmare. All you know is who they are and where they are, but the details are unknown due to jamming, and X is the only hunter strong enough to accomplish these missions. Our investigators are Commander Yamark, Ground Scarovich, Blaze Heatnix, Blizzard Wolfang, Rainy Turtloid, Metal Shark Player, Shield Sheldon, and Infinity Myginian. The hell is a Myginian?
I think it's supposed to be a water flea or something. Either way, his design is really cool.
So all of these stages have alternative paths marked by a blue crystal that you can take to find new bosses instead of the intended investigator. Doesn't matter which stage you do first, but if you find one of these paths and get to the end, you'll find the Zero Nightmare and you fight it. It's just a light version of fighting Zero in X5, mostly all the same moves, but easier to dodge. After that fight, Zero shows up alive and well. I was so happy to see my boy alive and well in this game.
I'm all for Zero being alive and playable here, but this was extremely clumsy execution. He shows up literally out of nowhere and exclaims that, "I hid myself to repair myself." Look at him from X5. How the fuck would he have done that?
That's just how Zero do, Sleepy Joe. That's just how Zero do.
Terrible execution aside, Zero is back and becomes a playable character again.
And a few things are different about his kit too. His standard 3-hit combo is a little different now, ending in an upper slash instead of a downward one. The Z Buster on him is absurdly stronger than it was in X5. It has way less wind up and can be fired at a pretty fast rate. It also deals more damage too.
It was way overtuned. It makes some bosses even easier than they already are.
Whoa, guys, let's pump the brakes real quick and finish discussing the story.
Whatever, man.
I'm dealing with children here, I swear. So anyways, all of these bosses have probably the most development we have seen in any of these games. They all have some form of tragic backstory and being brought back to life by Gate. They serve him as a sign of loyalty for him giving them all a second chance and to pay their debt to him for said service. Blizzard Wolfang was the leader of an environmental development team, and a Maverick attack had them all killed except him. People opposing Gate pinned the blame on Wolfang for their deaths, claiming he went Maverick and was disposed of to make it look like an accident. Rainy Turtloid was the leader of a water purification team, his shell being extremely resilient to the acid rain he dealt with daily. Gate faced scrutiny for Turtloid being too strong and to weaken him, which he declined. Turtloid took his own life as a result due to feeling like a burden on his master. These backstories come up before fights with them, and you can learn more about them by Aelia after clearing their respective stages. This is one thing this game does pretty well.
One of the few things it does well, I admit. After dealing with the investigators, Gate contacts the hunters and reveals that he is the one responsible for everything currently going on: the Nightmare, ISOC, and High Max. What he found at the crash site was actually a piece of Zero's DNA, and it made him go mad. He made the Nightmare with it and wants to subjugate weaker Raploids to build his own advanced Raploid world.
I'll give it to Gate, though. He basically contacted them immediately, ready to throw hands and challenge them to a duel at his secret lab. Dude is not afraid one bit, even against the Giga Chad Zero himself.
We get to the final stages of the game, Gates Lab. These stages are filled to the brim with spikes. Like, dude has a fetish and gets off on them.
This stage is an encapsulation of why I hate this game so much. I'm going to hold off until after this story.
We fight the Nightmare Mother in Gates Lab 1, and it has to be the most bullshit boss in any Mega Man X game ever. There is no pattern to how it moves around the area, and you only have a small window to attack the cores.
Dude, just use the Shadow Armor for this thing. The blade from the charge shot or the Giga attack from it does good damage when you get those opportunities.
Gates Lab 2 is where shit really hits the fan. You run through a gauntlet of difficult obstacles and platforming. You fight High Max for probably a second time. For those that know this stage already, I bet you went with the Shadow Armor the first time to reach the ceiling and ignore the spike hazards. After you beat High Max, the next part of the level starts. Oh right, you aren't done with this stage yet after High Max. You come across a jump that is impossible to clear unless you have the jumper parts equipped, use the blade armor, or playing as Zero. You can clear it with crazy shenanigans with the Shadow Armor, but it's gimmicky at best. This has to be the worst level design I've seen in a long time.
You know, I can't even bullshit you on this one. This level is definitely one of the worst levels I've ever seen.
The stage is the literal pits of hell. When you manage to get past this sorry excuse of a level, you finally encounter Gate.
Gotta say, the guy knows his style of armor. I love the solid gold look.
Of course, you would like Gate for a reason like that.
Just being true to myself, Sleepy Joe. Gold is the best color after all.
And here I thought it was the color orange.
This fight is another bullshit fight too. No weapon hurts him at all. Your Buster, Zero's sword, special weapons. No. The only thing that hurts him are these energy orbs he shoots out that you have to destroy. They all have different properties. Green ones chase you, orange ones shoot projectiles, purple ones summon nightmare viruses, red ones slow your movements down, and blue ones pull you towards them.
Even trying to hurt him in this intended way hurts you too if the projectiles hit you. The saving grace is that they hurt you in the smallest amount possible. But it's still pretty bullshit all the same, like Obama said.
This fight is definitely a trial and error kind of fight. There aren't tricks for making this easier. Luck is the only thing you have sometimes.
We eventually do take him down, and he reveals that he had a contingency plan in case this happened. And guess who is back yet again?
If you guess Sigma, congratulations, you get a cookie.
Sigma then off-skate himself, and we get to witness this gem of voice acting.
Truly captivating.
So now we have to chase down Sigma for the 6th time, and through willpower of fighting things we fought already, we get to him.
He is the easiest version of Sigma as well. The first form is him practically a zombie, and it's too easy. The second form is a little more challenging, but the Shadow Armor Giga attack will shred this guy in no time. But our editor is pretty bad at it.
Hey, don't be like that with our editor. He does good work.
Best he can, at least, and I'll leave it with that.
With Sigma gone yet again, we get 3 different endings. If you beat the game with X without finding Zero, it will be a scene of Aelia and X, bringing over Gates' body, talking about building a utopia, all while Zero looks from the distance, recognizing that X is strong enough to be on his own now. If you ended up finding Zero, it will be a scene with X holding Gates' body and Zero saying that he is too damaged beyond repair. The rest of the crew show up talking about their plan to rebuild the world, and Aelia wanting to create a program resistant to corruption and viruses. The last one is the most intriguing. If you beat it as Zero, the scene is him talking to a scientist about sealing himself in a capsule for around 100 years, so a cure could possibly be found for the Maverick virus after studying Zero's body. This is a scene that would take place a while from now, being an eventual lead up to the Mega Man Zero series.
With our story discussion done, I got to start by saying that even though the story and characters here are interesting and developed in an interesting way, this game sucks ass.
You too, Obama? The game still has the same gameplay style from 4 and 5, though, so it's at least still fun to play.
You're completely ignoring all the dumbass level designs in this whole game and the nightmare effects on the stages. This game was not play tested properly, and it's especially obvious if you happen to play as Armorless X.
Why would someone even do that when the game gives you the whole Falcon armor at the very start of the game? This game expects you to use that armor if you do play X.
Then why even have Armorless X as a playable character if we're using that logic? You can come across bottomless pits that Armorless X can never hope to cross. We can't also forget if you happen to find Hymax in any of the stages without any special weapons. You can't beat him without at least one of them.
There are quite a bit of oversights like that in this game. You have leaps of faith, nightmare effects that don't add meaningful difficulty to any stage, player hostile level design, and sometimes levels are just boring.
Speaking of nightmare effects, these levels just get plain shittier by these things. You play a level, and other levels are affected by the nightmare. It can be anything from a blackout effect affecting your vision, fireballs that rain from the sky, flies that get in the way of your shots, and silhouettes of X or Zero that get free shots at you. Whatever happens in this game, the nightmare is blamed for everything.
I do admit that some levels are good though. Rainy Turtloid has acid rain that constantly depletes your health, and you have to destroy these small devices to stop the rain. You're provided with a device that will fully heal you before each session too, to give you some equal footing. Shield Sheldon's level has these laser puzzles where you need to change the angle of mirrors to open gates to proceed. It's a little clumsy though, but it's still interesting at least.
Can't forget that the bosses are mostly piss easy. The stages themselves are the bosses. Blaze Heatnix is probably the worst example of this. Besides Donald, you agreed to parts of Gates' lab being straight cheeks.
I did say that, sure, but you guys forget about the fun glitches that can be heavily abused to make speedrunning this game insanely fun. Some stages allow you to make Zero invulnerable to everything if you use Turtloid's technique on a destroyable platform. Sheldon's energy barrier makes every frame of Zero's swing able to deal damage, shredding them all with ease.
That says more about the quality of this game than anything else, man.
Glitches aside, we have the part system in this game again. We instead find them from rescuing Raploids in the stages. So which ones have parts? Too bad, the game doesn't tell you.
That leads into probably the most hated enemy in the whole community, the Nightmare Virus. These fuckers are everywhere and can infect the rescuable hostages if you don't destroy them fast enough. Did one infect a hostage? Well, it's gone forever, along with the part it might have had. Got to reload your save again. Worst enemy ever designed, I swear.
That's why you kill them as soon as possible. Don't let them out of your sight for even a moment. They also drop Nightmare Souls, which is directly correlated into upgrading your rank with X and Zero, respectively. It's also how you can equip more parts to them at one time. After you fight Hymax in any of the stages, you'll find Dynamo. From now on, each time you go through any stage's hidden route. Now he gives you a ton of Nightmare Souls each time you beat him. It's the best way to farm these souls.
Still a shame that we don't know anything about him outside of being a bounty hunter. At least in this game, we do see him actually being a bounty hunter, I guess. These souls are also how you can see more development with Alia's relation to Gate. You can see that they were once colleagues at one point that used to work together. Remember that story with Blizzard Wolfang? Alia was the one that made his death look like an accident. She followed a conspiracy by her supervisors to basically get Gate to quit the research team they were in. She regretted that action and joined the Hunters for a fresh start as a navigator.
It's too bad she doesn't keep her hair down. She looks way better with it down than in a bun.
Such interesting character development. And it has to be in a game like this. It's a shame, really. I also don't like that they didn't consider developing Cygnus or Douglas at all.
I guess they don't have any personal or emotional stake in this story, like Alia, I suppose. Either way, I agree with you, Joe.
Once more, you can find two armors for X in this game, the Blade Armor and the Shadow Armor. Both are really good sets too. The Blade Armor lets you dash in 4 directions from the air. The Shadow Armor lets you be a cool robot ninja that shoots ninja stars and have immunity to spikes. Both have deadly Giga attacks too. You can still grab parts for X with Zero like in X5, so that's a good thing overall.
I do agree, but it's a shame that some power-ups are either too easy to find or there isn't any telegraphed information about where to go to get them. You also can't use these armors till you have the whole set like an X5, but this time there isn't a reason for it.
The weapons also suck ass too. The only one worth anything is the Yanmar option. It gives you a barrier that also shoots at enemies too. The rest are just not good enough.
Hey Joe, don't forget about Shark Player's weapon. It has some okay uses, plus that charge shot is epic as hell.
Oh, you're right. How could I forget that charge shot? You let loose a volley of Storm Eagles.
Zero is probably the best he has ever been, though. He starts with his double jump without needing a technique, and everything is mostly the same as usual. He can use the Yanmar option in the guard shell like X can too.
I'll say this, no matter how much I hate this game, it has the best soundtrack out of any of the X Games bar. None. Just about every track slaps insanely hard.
Agreed. Infinity Maginian and Blaze Heatniks are among my favorite jams in this game.
I don't know if I have a favorite one. It's so hard to pick out of all that's available. I suppose the intro and Metal Shark Player are my favorites.
For me, it's Blizzard, Wolfang, and Gates Lab Easy.
Are we missing anything else? I think we might have covered what we can. I'm getting sleepy now, and angry too about thinking of this trash game again.
I don't think so. I'm wanting to take a break myself. We've been here for around an hour now. Where do you guys think this game should go?
I would go with an A tier or even B. This game has its flaws, sure, but it's still a great game, especially for speed runs. You have to embrace the jank.
I think this game is one of the worst games ever. Even with the story bits and hidden lore for it, the gameplay and levels bury any good thing this game has going for it. I say F tier.
Personally, I think D tier is the best placement for it. I understand Donald's point of view, and me and Joe seem to have similar takes. I'll acknowledge that it's fun to play in some capacity. The rest of the game is dragged down by everything else it has going on.
Wow, I didn't know I was surrounded by such scrubs. You guys are being too harsh on this game.
It's more than this game deserves. Cry about it.
Well, I'm turning in for the night. Catch you boys later to finish this.
Same here. Catch you later.
Guess I'll play a little X6 first. I'm now itching to give it a round again.